It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, it actually is kind of right now an afternoon drive. You know, work ended for me a little bit earlier. It's only 3 o'clock or so. You're on an afternoon drive. How are we feeling?
Feeling good. I don't know what day it is. I feel like that's happened to me like 4 times this week. I was literally standing in the locker room like, wait, is Thanksgiving tomorrow? Is today Wednesday? Is that accurate? I don't know. I think coming out of the short week, there was an extra day, and now there's the holiday coming up for the rest of the world. My world does not believe in holidays. We don't get holidays off. So yeah, it's been strange. It is Wednesday. I am fairly certain at this point that it is Wednesday afternoon. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving, and we're
That's
4 days out from the Steelers playing the Cincinnati Bengals.
let's say tomorrow being Thanksgiving. That's your back pocket reminder there in terms of today being Wednesday. If you needed another reminder the rest of the way.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. Yeah,
Want to dive into obviously some Steelers talk on Steelers Afternoon Drive. So we should do that. I wanted to bring up one thing right off the bat, Alan, as I always like to dive into the injuries early in the episode so I don't forget about them like I almost did yesterday. Monty Adams having his 21-day window opened up, so he started practicing today, not activated from IR, but seemed pretty confident based off the post that you put out in your conversation with him that he was going to play on Sunday.
I asked Mont. Somebody else had asked him sort of what's it like coming back and rehabbing and like. I'm not criticizing the question, but it was like a fluffier question, and I was just like, "Mont, you can play this week?" You're like, "Yes, sir." I'm like, oh, there you go. That is what I needed out of this conversation. That was like the whole interview for me was there. All right, cool. Thank you. See you later.
Yeah, that's all you're looking
Just
for.
got straight to the point.
I didn't realize it's been 6 weeks that they've been without him. I really like him as a rotational piece. I think that he brings something there behind Keanu Benton in that defensive front that they don't have when he's out. I think he's a really good athlete for the position. So I'm excited to get him back. I think that he's going to add something that they've been missing for the last 6 weeks.
I'll tell you what I didn't realize. So I was at practice. The way it works is we can watch all practice, but the only time we can take video is at the very beginning of practice. And so I took go out there. So I'm always there at the very beginning of practice so I can take video. I don't always watch all of the rest of practice, but I want to get there at the very beginning. So I get there and I see Mont out there. And so I took a little run back over to the media area, and I'm furiously keyboarding to try to get a story ready because the Steelers didn't announce it before practice started that he was coming back, and they don't have to. That the timing's up to them. As long as they send it to the league, they can announce it whenever they want to. But so I'm back there trying to get through the story because I want to get it ready to go when the announcement comes. And I look for it, I was like, Mon Adams 1 sack with the Pittsburgh Steelers in his going on now 4 seasons. I was surprised by that. Just he hasn't had more. But, plays a lot of nose tackle, so he plays, I would say, a higher percentage of run downs than pass downs. But I think he's a really, really useful rotational piece. And, yeah, I think, it's one, like you say, like, hey, the Steelers got their backup nose tackle back. And you're like, yeah, what do you freaking do? But, like, I don't know. I think he's a guy that provides some real depth to that defensive line that is significant.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we're talking about it's crazy that he's been on this team that long, that he's been around since 2021, right? Was the first
21,
year.
Yeah, he came. We're way off the rails here, but like the week that he came, the Steelers signed him off the Saints practice squad, and it was the week before the Steelers bye. And I remember somebody asked Carl Dunbar because we can talk to the players, the assistant coaches on the bye week. Is it good that you got Mont in here, with a whole week to get him up to speed? And Carl Dunbar was like, if I can't teach somebody to play nose tackle in 2 days, then I shouldn't have this job.
Wow.
It's really not that difficult of an assignment. There's only 2 things to do. Most of the time, you can figure out which one of the 2 you're supposed to be doing on your own. I just thought it was classic Carl Dunbar, but yeah, man, Mont's been around a while. He's a real leader in that defensive line room. not in the way that sort of Cam Hayward is. Cam is very much the vocal guy. I think Mont is very much the sort of heart and soul there. I think he brings a lot to the table.
You're talking about 3.5-ish seasons or whatever it is for Mont now, and just 17 games for Keanu Benton. But Keanu Benton also just 1 sack so far in his Steelers career. And what would be?
Yeah, I would have thought we've seen more of that from Keanu this year. I think that's one of the. If you want to look at some of the disappointing things that have happened for the Steelers this year, I really thought that he was poised for a breakout. He's always been a good run defender, but I thought as a pass rusher, he was so close so many times last year. I just thought we would see more from him, and especially like you look at a game last week against the Browns where they were paying a lot of attention to T.J. Watt. They were trying to give their third string left tackle some help against Herbig. They're shading the center towards Cam. Like, it felt like there were a lot of one-on-one matchups available for the other defensive linemen, and they didn't really come through with them in a way that I think the Steelers were hoping for. So I know KB's been dealing with a knee injury. I don't know how much that's impacting him right now, but I think that's, like, if you just look at the totality of the season, I think probably not as good as had been hoped for at this point.
Sure. 17 starts, by the way, played in 28. I don't want the comments to come at me for saying that. I don't want to misspeak. So 28 games played as a Steeler, 17 starts, but just the
you
one
can come
sack
at him
so
anyway.
far.
You have my permission. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
make sense.
I mean,
we've established that a long time ago. You can say whatever you want.
Me saying to not do so will make them do so.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
just
typically the way it
invited
works.
it onto yourself.
The other injured player I want to talk about, Alex Highsmith. We talked about him not doing much of anything yesterday. What was the case that you're able to speak on, if at all, today?
Like the slightest bit more than nothing. Today, there's one video up on the channel of the very first individual drill on several days of the week for the defensive line is get off drill. They all line up and Vince Williams usually or another member of the coaching staff will snap the ball on a stick, and it's whichever player can get to the 5 yards downfield the fastest. They all just like a race, and you don't want to be off sides, but you want to get there the first. And I was thinking that, and so that's like a no contact, just drill. I don't think that gives a lot of warm and fuzzies about his chances this week, but we'll see. They have 2 more practices. I would not rule him out just yet. But when that limited comes down on the injury report, and as we're talking right now, it has not come down yet, but I expect it will, know that was very limited.
Okay. All right. Well, and another thing we were talking about, we talked about Monty, things that we didn't realize and stuff like that. This stat could be very telling in towards of how impactful it is when Alex Highsmith is or is not on the field. The team is 6-0 with Alex Highsmith in games that he plays this year. They are 2-3 without him. It's kind of like I mentioned how he's the defense. Him and Jalen Warren kind of paralleling with their frustrations in terms of the injuries that they've suffered and stuff. The Cleveland game was the first game that the Steelers lost in which Jalen Warren had played, and he was 8-0 in this season up until that loss. I'm not saying he directly impacts the result of a game in that fashion, but again, just kind of the parallels there. The Steelers 6-0 with Highsmith, 2-3 without. Alan, what do we chalk this up to? Is this just a coincidence, or is he really that impactful on the other side of TJ Watt?
No, I mean, I think Alex Highsmith's a really good player. Now, is there some of that that's a coincidence? Yeah, sure, absolutely. Like, it's about the quality of the opponent and a whole bunch of other stuff. But I do think there are some Steelers fans that I think have sort of forgotten how good Alex Highsmith is. And like, he's a legit star edge rusher in his own right. He's having a frustrating year with injuries right now, but like he's that dude, and really, really good against the run as well as a pass rusher. And I think the Steelers lose a lot when he's not in there, and I think that's been made pretty clear this year.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly doesn't get lost on me how impactful he is. I think that people really, and don't get me wrong, I love Nick Herbig and what he brings to the table too, but I think people get caught up in what Nick Herbig is able to do in spurts, thanks to what Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt do for a majority of the game and let him come in to do when he does get those reps. Not taken away from Herbig at all, but I think you see what happens when he plays the entire duration of a game and how he holds up. And also, man, that I think that also really takes away from what Alex Highsmith is as a run defender. I think we also get caught up a bit sometimes in terms of just the pass rush production, but certainly the way that he sets the edge, it doesn't get lost on me.
Yeah, and I think he's really improved in that. He was not always that good when he first started. He's gotten really good against the run. Yeah, I think having a guy with the burst that Herbig has is a super cheat code for the Steelers. But like, I was a little disappointed in his performance against the Browns. He's playing a guy who's never started at left tackle his entire life, and he comes through with the one strip sack. But I just felt like, given the amount of attention the Browns paid to the other guys on that defensive front, that they kind of needed Herbig and Preston Smith. I'll lump them two together. They needed more than one sack out of those two guys playing against the third-string left tackle who had never started at left tackle before in his life. Like, I just think my expectations for this defense are to get more pressure than that if you're going to feed them that kind of red meat.
Yeah, especially in the case of with me with Preston Smith, he made one play that I noticed. It was like a little flip out from Jameis to Nick Chubb that he broke up on a pass play, but like didn't notice him as a pass rusher much at all. And on a short week, I thought that they really needed him to as the bigger bodied guy opposite of TJ Watt to really show up. And I didn't see him. So definitely in the same.
Yeah, and I
there.
thought his like level of experience and the fact that he didn't play that much in the game before against the Ravens would really let him like handle the short week well. And I mean, I didn't really see it. I was a little disappointed in the output from that position. Some weird things happen on a short week. There's a lot of things that like I don't want to make too much of it, like because it happened. I want to talk about it happening, but I'm not worried about it happening this week. But I do think having Alex Highsmith makes the Steelers a whole heck of a lot better.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, Alex Highsmith may be floating a little bit under the radar in terms of the Steelers fan base and doesn't get talked about enough. What has gotten talked about enough, and Alan, you mentioned this to me, I see the comments all the time, but you said you were taken back a little bit about the comments towards Arthur Smith from the fan base. I mean, I see it all the time, and my response when you said that to me was, I just don't think most fans like their offensive coordinator regardless of the team. Like, I'll use Kyle Shanahan as an example right now. I know he's the head coach, but he's also the offensive coordinator for the 49ers. They sit at 5-6. Deebo Samuel's podcast, like he's on there defending him. I go and look at the comments. Everybody, fire Kyle, fire Kyle, fire Kyle. Like, it's insane to me the way that the things turn. I feel like the only fan base right now that is happy with their offensive coordinator is probably the Detroit Lions and maybe the Kansas City Chiefs. The Bills are probably within there too. There's maybe 3 teams right now that like their offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean that's hilarious. Kyle Shanahan is the best coach in the NFL, like period. And like I don't even think second place is that close. Period. And man, that's wild. Yeah, I agree that I think nobody likes their offensive coordinator. I think this has always been a thing. I remember, and this is way before your time, but I remember people in this town complaining about Ron Earhart and Joe Walton, and when I was before I even really knew what football was, I knew what people complaining about the offensive coordinator was. But I think this is a thing where like Madden has made it so much worse because it's so much easier than it is in real life. Like, I always say that like Madden has made the average 12-year-old better at like NFL clock time management than the average NFL coach. But I think like the ease in which like how easy it is to call plays in Madden compared to real life and how unrealistic it is compared to what the real life process is has really made people's feelings towards their offensive coordinators even worse than they used to be.
Yeah, it is wild to me. I'll say that. And also, just like back to the Kyle Shanahan thing, what I want to add to that is like the same people that are saying that are the same people that don't think Brock Purdy's very good, but is elevated because of that system. Look at any running back that they plug and play within there. I mean, it's not his fault, the injuries that they've obviously had to endure this year. Like Brandon Ayuk hurt. George Kittle's missed a ton of time. Christian McCaffrey for a half plus of the season. Deebo Samuel, very clearly not the same version of Deebo Samuel. And I think that that's been coming down the pipeline for a while where we've seen him start to regress as a player. But yeah, I mean, so many things on the offensive side of the ball. I think primarily we got to look at the offensive side of the ball too when we're talking about Kyle Shanahan. I think that that's where obviously his fingerprints are. So I don't know. I think that I understand that they're 5-6 this year and stuff like that. I think that if you take in all the elements, you look at the body of work. Yeah, it's pretty wild to have some of the takes that I've seen.
I think the average fan massively overrates the import of coaching on who wins on a day in and day out basis. I was actually thinking about this for a story idea this week, and I was literally going to point to this year's 49ers and be like, do people think that Kyle Shanahan just forgot how to coach, or does the fact that he's played almost the entire year without one of Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, or Brock Purdy, like which of those do we think is the reason that the 49ers are not as good this year? And apparently some people have come to the conclusion that it's Kyle Shanahan, which
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, to be quite honest, I haven't watched a ton of 49ers football this year, but just for, like I follow some people that are within that space, and you know they've talked about the regression that they've seen from Brock, just in terms of like not trusting receivers, being on the wrong page with guys. And like I said, I think when you lose a guy like Brandon Ayuk who runs every route and opens up things underneath for Deebo, like Deebo's not the route runner guy from that standpoint. Juan Jennings is a good player, and I know they took Ricky Pearsall in the first round, but like Brandon Ayuk does so many different things for that offense. And when you lose that very early in the season, you don't have Christian McCaffrey either, man. But I mean, look at what he did with Jordan Mason, like the way that he was running at the beginning of the year. Like, again, any running back can be thrown in there and succeed. But to bring this back to a Steelers perspective with Artie Smith, what do we make of the fact that it seems like fans already this early in his Steelers tenure have kind of turned on him? I mean, as a podcast that I feel like, especially the last couple of weeks, has kind of been scratching our heads with some of the personnel decisions and stuff like that. I think it's fine to critique that, but I'm certainly not somebody that believes that they already need to move on from Artie Smith.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfectly fine to have thoughts about specific calls or and there are things that like I'm seeing from these Steelers that have always been sort of like problems with Arthur Smith teams. This sort of fascination with like playing down the roster guys like a little bit too much. Like I think the Steelers are playing like Ben Skoranek and Michael Pruitt and Connor Hayward probably more snaps than they deserve. Um, and so like I think there's like that's just been a thing that he does, and it's not. I don't really agree with it, but it has not been a crippling fault in previous stops either. There are certainly specific calls where I'm going to look at. I don't like red zone fades to begin with. You start throwing them to your third string running back, and I think you're probably off the reservation. But I think like you got to look at the like I don't care how bad that call was. Like the big picture is the Steelers offense did not get that much better personnel wise. They did add Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, but they lost Deontay Johnson, who was a very big part of this offense last year, and did not really replace him very well. And they lost James Daniels, a game into the season, and have been playing a fourth-round rookie offensive lineman all year next to their second-round rookie offensive lineman. Like, this is not a great offense personnel-wise, and they're 15th in the league in scoring. And if not for some, like, wonky red zone issues that have cropped up since I've made the switch from Fields to Wilson, they'd probably be in the top 10. I don't know what more people were thinking that these players were capable of, but I would not have said the Steelers were capable of being a top 10 offense with the players they have at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we had a conversation on here. Like, what did we think was the ceiling? Where do we realistically think they were going to be? Where did they need to be along with this defense to be, kind of where they're at right now, or at least in the mix, right where they're at right now? Like, I figured this was going to be like somewhere between a top 15, top 18 offense, and they're certainly within that realm right now. So
15th in scoring right this moment. I think
yeah.
they're a little bit. They may be 20th in yards, but right in that range.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, I mean, I'm not going to fall back on this because every team obviously suffers injuries, but they're playing with offensive linemen right now that they certainly didn't anticipate playing this early in their careers and were at the beginning of the year, especially in the case of Zach Frazier. But now the inclusion of Mason McCormick, you lose your first round pick in Troy Fautano. You lose, I mean, I don't know how big of a role we were expecting Roman Wilson to have. Certainly changed once he suffered that ankle sprain in training camp. When they drafted him, we thought maybe it could have been a more significant role at some point this year. But they've had a couple lost rookie seasons too within this on offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody deals with injury, but you look at what they had last year and what they're playing with this year. And I understand the quarterback position has definitely been significantly upgraded, but overall, I don't know how much more talented they are on offense than they were last year. Not a lot, maybe a little. Not well, they're about 5 points a game better this year than they were last year. That's a massive, massive leap. And I understand Canada was providing a low bar, but
Yeah.
it was.
Well, with that being
I think
said, wouldn't you think that people would be more appreciative of wouldn't you think that there'd be I didn't see
I don't
both
know.
sides of it. I think that there's probably some offensive coordinator fatigue, like it all looks bad because of this. And again, I think most fans just don't like their offensive coordinator. But I could also see it being the other way, where it's like anything is an upgrade, and being a top half of the league offense, like it's just we're not used to seeing this, and there'd be even more appreciation. So I
It's
don't know.
funny because I feel like that has been the reaction to Russell Wilson playing some passable quarterback, and now
Mm.
there were people were like, "Oh my god, he's so great!" I'm like, just chill. It's okay. It's not been great, uh, but it doesn't seem like that has transferred to the offensive coordinator. Um, I don't really know why, but yeah,
So yeah, they're actually 14th right now in scoring. I'm trying to look at where they were at in 2023. Yeah,
28th.
fifth worst. 20. Yeah. 28th. So made a significant leap there, for sure. So I'm curious to see what people that watch or listen to this think, in general, in terms of Artie Smith. We're talking about. Do you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, well, I just want to take it
Okay.
to the next place I want to go. One of the
Okay.
real areas that I think I've been a little disappointed in Arthur Smith has been the usage of Pat Freiermuth. We've talked
Yep.
about that on here a good bit, and I got to talk to Pat today about it a little bit. And I think it's interesting that Arthur Smith has been the guy. If you are like, hey, tell me about Arthur Smith. Well, he was the offensive coordinator when Derrick Henry was at his very best, and he's borderline creepily obsessed with tight ends, right? That's sort of like the elevator pitch of the Arthur Smith offensive scheme. And Pat Freiermuth can't seem to get the ball more than 3 times in a game. I on one hand am a little disappointed that they have not found more usage than that. But on the other hand, when you have a coordinator that has throughout his career always been able to get the ball to the tight end,
Yeah.
and now they have a really good tight end that the front office just paid $12 million a year, and he's not getting the ball,
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't that lead you to believe that that's not necessarily the way the coordinator wants it to be going down? Like, I don't know, isn't
Yeah.
that the logical conclusion there?
No, I mean that's a good point. Certainly, I think that there's still probably a lot of people trying to figure out what the reason is. Is it more about the quarterback, the area of the field that Pat Freiermuth is at? Is it just the deployment in general? But you're right. I mean, if Arthur Smith had his way, we've seen what that has meant in the past for offenses and tight end utilization within the offense. So why would it be any different here? If he had his way ultimately, I don't know. That's
Yeah.
a good point.
And I don't think people realize like the coordinator. It's fine. The coordinator can call whatever he wants. Like the
Mhm.
quarterback is decided. The quarterback and the defense are deciding where the ball goes, not the coordinator. Like all the coordinator is doing is moving the pieces on the chessboard. Like he's not like. I think people think that the play call comes in you know, Omaha Blue 40, throw the ball to Pat Freiermuth. That's not the way it works. He's just putting the people in places. The quarterback has to figure out who should get the ball. And he doesn't necessarily have all that much control over that process. He can go back and say, hey, the next time we do this, you should throw it to 88. But, like,
Mm-hmm.
that's about it. Like, in the moment, what the defensive look the quarterback reads and then what the quarterback himself sees is impacting who gets the ball a lot more than the coordinator is.
Yeah. So what was, Pat's take on that? Like, how much did he have to say in terms of that conversation today?
I think Pat just basically said, like, he just said, like, I think we're doing some good things on offense and we're winning. And so as long as that happens, I don't really care if I get the ball or not.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And then the second thing he said was, like, I kind of, like, believe in the football gods where, like, if you just keep going out there and doing the right thing, the ball's going to find you eventually. Like, there will become a time where whatever happens that they're going to need him or the quarterback's going to need him or, whatever, that he's going to be a bigger part of this offense. And, he says, like, there's times where he comes out of the game plan, thinking, oh, I'm going to do the ball 10 times. And then, like, oh, this team plays something that we were completely unexpected on defense or somebody gets hurt. And he's like, you can go into a game with all kinds of intentions and then like, it's not anybody's fault that it didn't happen. Like, it just is what it is. Like, you can't. And he's like, it would be one thing if I felt like there was no thought about me. But, like, I know that's not the case. Like, so there's no reason for me to get frustrated about it. It's just the way things go sometimes.
Okay. I mean, I can appreciate that. It sounds exactly like him. I will say, when they went to Cincinnati last year, first game post Matt Canada, he had a massive game. Now, obviously, very different circumstances surrounding that. We have an offensive coordinator here that's different, have a quarterback that's different, some different pieces in there. But, I think he's got to be feeling pretty good about going back to Cincinnati.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, too. And this Bengals defense is beat up and not playing that well. So, yeah. I think if you're looking for a Pat Freiermuth game, my wife has him on her fantasy football team, and she's like just like tell like what's going on here? Like, should I cut him? Should I play him? Like, what? And I'm like, this might be the week. This might be the week. Maybe.
Sounds just like my dad. Your wife and my dad, I think, need to have a conversation about their frustrations with Pat Freiermuth's fantasy season. And Pat hears it from time to time from me as well. So, but anyway, let's finish up. We've been talking about a lot of offensive things. Let's stick with that conversation. Question that we got here from Johnny Bravo 88. Oh, 88. There we go. Maybe this is I wonder if this is Pat Freiermuth burner.
All right. Pat would need to have a burner to comment on our show.
So he says, Johnny Bravo here says, talked about how this offense isn't built to play from behind the sticks. They don't have the talent on offense to make up when they have, the pre-snap penalties or don't pick up a nice chunk of yardage on first down. But they've also been so poor this year in short yardage situations. So what is the path for success for the Steelers?
This is a great question, Johnny. If that's your real name.
Or Lynn Swan. Or
Yeah. The path forward for the Steelers is when you win on first down, and by win on first down, I mean get more than 3.5 yards, right? You exceed your down distance goal. That makes you unpredictable. The Steelers are a team that needs to run the ball a lot. They do not have very much talent at the wide receiver position, nor do they have very much talent at the quarterback position. They cannot lean if this game with Cincinnati plays out that both teams in this game are going to have 55 passing attempts, the Steelers are going to lose that game by 20. They can't fight that battle. They don't have the horses. And there's only so many ways you can run the ball unpredictably. And so when you get into second and short, that's where you become unpredictable, right? Second and 4, nobody has any idea what the Steelers are going to do. They can run the ball and get another first down and keep it moving. They can call a screen. They can throw it deep. They can run play action. That's how the Steelers need to win. They need to win on first down, and then they become unpredictable. And then they start stacking first downs together, and they use the physicality of their offensive line, of Najee Harris, of Darnell Washington, and the way they play to wear teams down over the course of a game by staying on the field and keeping those drives alive. So you win by winning on first down. You win by possessing the football and by winning the battle of attrition over the course of a 60-minute football game. That's the design of this offense. And then sprinkle in your deep shots. You're gonna do all this. You're gonna run the ball. You're gonna be physical, and then you're gonna throw it deep. And you got a guy like George Pickens who's really good at that. You got another guy like Mike Williams who's really good at that, and you got a guy in Russell Wilson whose best attribute is his deep ball. I think the pieces are there for them to be better than they've been these last couple of weeks, no question.
Yeah.
But it starts with they have to run the ball and they have to win on first down. If they don't do that, everything else falls apart. The entire offense is built on running the ball. That's why I was very skeptical of them going into that Cleveland game, because I did feel like the young offensive line was going to have a harder time certainly than their opposition in dealing with the short week, and they were not able to run the ball at all in that game. And it was the first domino in their offensive failures against the Browns.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree, and I do think that this is a good question, but I think, part of the thing is, like, brings up how they're not built to play from behind. I certainly agree with that, but that doesn't mean, and also how they're bad in short yardage situations need to succeed. Like, so the path forward for them is still what it has been. It's just they haven't done it. Like, that's still, those things are things that they need to do. Just because they haven't done it yet, that doesn't mean that's not the best path forward for this specific offense. So that's where I'm at with it. That's where you're at.
There, I lost you.
So for me, even so, with that being the case, like, they haven't necessarily been good at playing this way, especially over the last couple of weeks. To me, that doesn't mean that that's not the path forward. I think that needs to be the path forward for this specific offense because of the personnel that they have.
Yeah, you can't just do something. And that's one of the. I think the last couple of teams have played them a little bit differently on defense, and I don't really think we've seen them come up with a sort of schematic answer. Like, Russ has always struggled against cover two. They've seen a lot more cover two the last couple of weeks, including from a team that barely plays it in Cleveland. And if the number one response to what do you do when you get to cover two is run the ball. If you can't run the ball, there are no other, like, magic bullets there. So, I think they're sort of tied to this game plan, for better or for worse. It's interesting. Russ actually mentioned today, talking about the red zone failures, that he feels like they're getting a lot of zone in the red zone, and because in the red zone you don't have the same punishment against the run for playing the zone, because the space is. When you're playing cover two at the 50-yard line, the safeties are 12 yards down the field. When you're the two, the safeties are only 5 yards down the field. So they're able to play both from that alignment, and so I really think that's what's giving them problems right now. And they need, like, a schematic. They need a tactical fix, but it can't be a strategic shift. Like, they still have to be the same team they are. They just need a winner against a specific kind of coverage.
Absolutely. And hopefully, like we're talking about and have kind of been prefacing with this defense that they're going to see coming up, the Cincinnati Bengals presents a get-right spot, if you will, certainly for this offense. So hopefully that is the case on Sunday. Good stuff. Alan, until tomorrow, tell the people they can find you.
At Saunders _ PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now is the site's account, SteelersNow.com. Go there, read the words. That's where they live. I need you to read them for me to get paid. Also, you can sign up for XN Plus. I also get paid that way. Use promo code Allen10 to get 10% off a annual subscription, which works out to be $4 a month, which is like half of a Wendy's sandwich now. I don't even know. It's a 3-inch sub at Subway. Okay, it's whatever it's cheap is what it is. Okay, it's like one of them little miniature, junior Frosty deals. go there, do that. You get the best stuff from me, DB, Aaron Becker, the whole rest of the Steelers Now team, and an ad-free viewing experience, which is awesome. Like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube platform so you don't miss an episode of Steelers Morning Rush. Which, by the way, my apologies. I did everything this morning. I recorded the episode. I did not hit publish on YouTube. It did go out to our audio listeners, but I dropped the ball on that one. So it's up there. If you were looking for it this morning, you're like, where's that one? My apologies. I goofed. But go check that out as well. And if you subscribe, you will know when Alan screws up and forgets, because you will be missing your usual notification.
There you go. We will have a Thanksgiving episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive for you tomorrow as well. So be sure. You hit the notification bell regardless, but for sure, if you hit that, you'll know when that is posted as well. It's going to be earlier than normal. So be sure to do that. Also, hit us in the comments with your thoughts on anything that we talked about today, a question for a future episode, maybe on tomorrow's episode. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive over there. Same thing on TikTok, Steelers Afternoon Drive, and then you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.